I now recognize the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins, for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, I have
The gentleman
unanimous
from
consent.
Georgia is recognized. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized. After the gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
So you're not going to recognize a possible motion before me?
Unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman.
Unanimous consent request.
It's a unanimous consent.
It's a unanimous consent request.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized. We'll entertain that later.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Chairman, I have a point of order.
The gentleman will state his point of order.
Mr. Chairman, last week you were furnished with a proper demand for minority hearing pursuant to Clause 2J1 of Rule 11. In a blatant and egregious violation of the rules, you are refusing to schedule that hearing. Therefore, I insist on my point of order unless you are willing to immediately schedule a minority hearing day.
That is not a proper point of order in today's hearing. As I have told the ranking member several times now, I am considering the minority's request.
It's not to be considered, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman will suspend. If the ranking member thinks we would be violating the rules of the House if we considered articles of impeachment before holding a minority day hearing, his point of order would be timely at a meeting where we considered articles of impeachment. That is not the purpose of today's hearing, and the point of order is not timely. The gentleman from Georgia.
Well, that got us started again. The chairman completely not answering a question. It is timely, and it's frankly not up to his discretion, but again, we've not really cared about that from the start to begin with. So my question is just schedule the hearing, but undoubtedly that's not what they want out there. So let's start over. Now that the chairman is recognized and we've got that point. You know, there have been famous moments in impeachment. There have been famous moments in impeachment as we've gone forward. There are famous lines from Nixon like, what did the president know and when did he know it? From the Clinton impeachment, there was, I did not have sex with that woman. What would be known about this one is probably, where's the impeachable offense? Why are we here? I tell you, this may be, though, become known as the focus group impeachment. Because we don't have a crime, we don't have anything we can actually pin, and nobody understands really what the majority is trying to do, except that interfere and basically make sure that they believe the president can't win next year if he's impeached. The focus group impeachment takes words and then takes them to people and say, how can we explain this better? Because we don't have the facts to match it. A focus group impeachment says, you know, we really aren't working with good facts, but we need a good PR move. That's why we're here today. This is all about, as I said last week, a clock and a calendar. And it really became evident to me that this was true because last Wednesday, after we had a long day of hearing here, the next morning, before anything else could get started, the Speaker of the House walked up to the podium and said, go write articles of impeachment. She just quit. She just stopped. Go write articles of impeachment. I appreciate that the majority practiced for 2 days this weekend on this hearing. I appreciate that the fact that you got to try and get it right to try and convince the American people of your problem, but your speaker's already undercut you. She took the thrill out of the room. You're writing articles of impeachment. Why couldn't we just save that time today, and if you're going to write the articles of impeachment, go ahead and write them? Well, there's probably a reason for that. Because the chairman laid out some amazing claims, none of which I think after this hearing today, the American people can honestly look at and see that there is overwhelming evidence, there is a proper reason he abused this power, because as the speaker, another statement she said, that to do impeachment you have to be so compelling and overwhelming and bipartisan, all of which we are not. So why not? Why are we here? Well, I think we can do this. Let's look at the three things that typically are associated with making your case for a crime. Let's do it against what the majority has said. I think they have motive, they have means, and they have opportunity. What's their motive? It's November 2020. It's been said over and over and over again. The chairman said it again this morning. It's been said all along that we have to do this because if we don't impeach him, he'll win again next year. The reason is shown as clearly as last week on the jobs report in the economy. And as I had a man come up to me in the grocery store this weekend, he said, keep doing what you're doing. He said, I've never seen an economy this good. He said, people are working, people are being taken care of, and this is just a fatal distraction on a president that they don't like. Motive is easy. November 2016, they lost. January 2017, just a few minutes in, the Washington Post confirmed what every Democrat had been talking about. Now's the time for impeachment. We see tweet after tweet saying, now let's get at it. It's amazing that they start with impeachment and then they spent 2 years trying to figure out what do we impeach him on? Well, the means became what we see now. The means is to always talk about impeachment, to always say this president's doing something wrong, to say he is illegitimate, as the chairman has said before, that he's not even a legitimate president. Is to constantly tear down at a president who is working on behalf of the American people. The sham impeachment, when we go through this, I think the chairman said something that was interesting. He said that the president should not be above the law and should be held accountable for the oath of their office. I think Congress ought to be held accountable for their oath of office as well, and not to do what we're doing right now, and that is run a process that doesn't fit fairness or decorum, to run a process and a fact pattern that you're having to force against a president you don't like. But what was the opportunity? The opportunity came last November when they got the majority and they began their impeachment run. They began in the process, even as selecting the chairman said that I would be the best person for impeachment. This is November of last year. Before we had any hearings, before we had even were sworn in to this Congress. For anyone, the media or watching on TV or watching in this room, for anyone to think that this was not a baked deal is not being honest with themselves. You see, presumption has now become the standard instead of proof. It should cause anyone to begin to question, because the entire case is built on a presumption, or as we found out last week from 3 scholars, that inference is okay. If you just infer that that's what they mean, then we'll take that. That was an interesting line. You know, it was interesting. They made their whole case built on Gordon Sondland. You're going to see that a lot today. He testified that he presumed that the aide was connected to an investigation, but he said nobody ever told him that. When Sondland even asked the president directly, he said, what do you want? The president said, I want nothing. I want Zelensky to do what he ran on. Ukraine did nothing and got the aid anyway. But you know how I know that this is also a problematic experience? Just look over the past 3 weeks. When the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, who, by the way, is absent today, I guess he can't back up his own report, but he started his own hearing by making up the factual call. When he made it up, he started the fairy tale that we're having today. If you can't even put the transcript in the right context, just read it. Chairman Schiff couldn't even read the transcript. He had to make it up, because if he didn't make it up, it didn't sound as bad. It didn't sound as bad. He said, listen, he said, let's make up some dirt. That's not what was said. The transcript, the chairman misled the American people. As an attorney, as a chairman, as a member of Congress who swore an oath to tell, basically to be honest with the American people and to uphold the Constitution, that was such a massive malpractice I've never seen. Because you know why? Again, they don't care about what actually was in the transcript. They don't actually care what happened. And we heard last week from witnesses, they don't even care that the aid was released. They're simply looking at the facts to make it fit their narrative. But what else happened? You know, this is also the Chairman Schiff who also said that he had seen collusion in plain sight. That it was already there before the Mueller report ever came out, that all of this was going to happen. But you know, I guess maybe I might need to just not stop commenting on Chairman Schiff and his guidance, because I may end up on the next phone records subpoena as we go forward. You see, we've taken a dangerous turn in this Congress. Subpoenas are fine, properly done, and should be done properly, but they should never be at the expense of a political vendetta. Professor Turley testified last week, presumption is no substitute for proof. The current legal case for impeachment is not just woefully inadequate, but in some respects dangerous and the basis for impeachment of an American president. Today, what we were supposed to get was like I love my friends on the majority of this committee said Mueller. When we got the Mueller report, it didn't go real well. So we had a lot of hearings, didn't go real well. Then we finally got Bob Mueller, and they said, this is going to be the movie version. In fact, what happened, they did, my colleagues on the majority had live readings from Capitol Hill. They made dramatic podcasts. They even wrote a comic book rendition that breathed life into the Mueller report, and it didn't work. So they brought Bob Mueller. This was the movie version. They told us Robert Mueller's testimony would be the thing that people watched and would be convinced. Guess what? They wasn't convinced. In fact, it fell flat. But you know, today, I guess, is the movie version of the Schiff report. Except one thing, the star witness failed to show up. Mr. Nunez is here. His staff is here. The leading headline is there, Schiff report. But where's Mr. Schiff? And Mueller, Robert Mueller testified. The Ken Starr report, Ken Starr testified. The author of the Schiff report is not here. Instead, he's sending his staff to do his job for him. I guess that's what you get when you're making up impeachment as you go. So as we look forward here, there's going to be plenty of time to discuss the factual case for this and the statements that are not being made. What is very detrimental to me, though, is this. This committee is not hearing from a factual witness. This committee is not doing anything past hearing from law school professors and staff. We've not been given, the chairman said something about the president not being able to come. Show me where he would actually have a proper process in this that's not talking to staff and not talking to law school professors, when we could actually have witnesses that will be called by both sides. But I want to say this in ending. I love this institution. I was here as a 19-year-old kid, as an intern, almost 32 years ago. This institution, as we see it today, is in danger. We see chairmen who are issuing subpoenas for personal vendettas. We see committees, such as the Judiciary Committee, that has held many, many substantive hearings, has been the very center point of impeachment, being used as a rubber stamp because we get not our marching orders from this committee and what it should be doing, but from the Speaker and the Intelligence Committee chairman. We're not able to do what we need to do because we're a rubber stamp. I love this institution, but in the last 3 days, over the last 3 or 4 days, I've seen stuff that just bother me to no end and should bother everyone. The Speaker of the House, after hearing 1 day of testimony in the Judiciary Committee, said, go write articles. Facts be damned. Al Green, another member of the House majority, said we can keep impeaching him over and over and over and over again. Adam Schiff, when he told us he wasn't going to come, instead hide behind his staff, he also told us that we're going to keep investigating because they know this is going nowhere in the Senate, and they're desperate to have an impeachment vote on this president. The economy is good, job creation is up, military is strong, our country is safe. And the Judiciary Committee has been relegated to this. Why? Because they have the means, they have the motive, and they have the opportunity. And at the end of the day, all this is about a clock and a calendar, because they can't get over the fact Donald Trump is president of the United States, and they don't have a candidate that they think can beat him. It's all political. And as we have talked about before, this is a show. Unfortunately, today, the witness who is supposed to be the star witness chose to take a pass and let a staff answer for him. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order.
The gentleman will state his point of order.
Mr. Chairman, Clause 2J1 of Rule 11 requires you to schedule a minority hearing day, not to consider it, not to meet to discuss it, but to schedule one, and to schedule it at a reasonable time, not after articles have been drawn, not after there's been a vote on articles of impeachment. I inquire and insist, Mr. Chairman, that you immediately schedule a minority hearing day, or tell us why you are ignoring the rules.
The gentleman, we've already gone through that, but I will repeat that is not a proper point of order in today's hearing. As I've told the ranking minority member several times, I'm considering the minority's request. If you think we would be violating the rules of the House if we considered articles of impeachment before holding a minority day hearing, that point of order would be timely at a meeting where we considered such articles. It's not the purpose of today's hearing, and the point of order is not in order.
Mr. Chairman, since I've been implicated in this, I'd like to ask
without objection,
our comments have not
without objection,
There is
all other
objection.
opening statements will be included in the record.
Reserve my point of objection on that.
Okay, the point of
I have
objection.
a question. You've brought my name into
The
this.
gentleman,
You have brought my name into this.
the gentleman will suspend. The gentleman is recognized.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's telling me that you're considering something you have nothing to consider, and you have told me that, I'll admit on record, is nowhere close to actually following your duty as a chairman to follow the rules. And so I think the point of order is very well taken. I think the issue that we have is not, I think your timing is, show me please in the rule, have your parliamentarian show me in the rules where you come to a time of actually being able to deny this up at a certain point.
Further reserving the right to object.
As I have said,
Further reserving the right to
as I have
object.
said, the point of order would be in order at the meeting where we are considering articles.
Further reserving the right to object.
We will now hear presentations.
Mr. Chairman, I appeal the decision of the chair.
There's no decision to appeal. There was not a ruling and a motion. We will
You have
now
to
hear
rule on a point.
There's a
presentation.
ruling on the point of order.
You made a ruling on the point of order.
Yeah, you made a ruling on the point of order, Mr. Chairman. You can't then not allow us to
Gentlemen,
appeal the ruling of the chair.
The gentleman will suspend. It was not a cognizable point of order. It was not a cognizable point of order. It was not in order at this time to make that point of order. There is no ruling to appeal.
But, Mr. Chairman,
Well,
the
now
rule was the
gentlemen-
obligation, not
gentlemen-
consideration. You are obligated
The gentleman
to
will
schedule,
suspend.
not to consider. You made a ruling. It is in
Gentlemen-
order to appeal.
The gentleman will suspend. We are doing what we have to do under the rules. We will now hear presentations of
Mr. Chairman.
evidence.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman
further-
is not recognized. We will now hear presentations of evidence
I have
from
a
counsel.
parliamentary inquiry.
I haven't removed my objection yet.
I will not recognize a parliamentary inquiry at this time. We will
When will you
now hear
recognize them?
presentations of evidence from counsels to the judiciary.
Is this when
Chairman.
we just hear staff ask questions of other staff and the members get dealt out of this whole hearing? And for the
Gentlemen
next
will-
4 hours, you're going to try to overturn the result of an election with
Gentlemen-
unelected people giving
Gentlemen will
testimony?
suspend. This hearing will be considered in an orderly fashion. The gentleman will not yell out, and he will not attempt to disrupt the proceedings. We will now hear presentations of evidence from counsels to the Judiciary Committee for up to 60 minutes, equally divided.
I've not removed my objection yet.
Barry Burke will present for the majority, and Stephen Castor will present for the minority. Each of you will have 30 minutes to present. To help you stay within that time, there is a timing light on your table. When the light switches from green to yellow, you have 1 minute to conclude your testimony. When the light turns red, it signals your time has expired. Mr. Burke, you may begin.
Mr. Chairman, you do realize I've never withdrawn my objection.
Gentleman will suspend.
I've not
Mr.
withdrawn my
Burke's-
objection. You've not asked my, talked to my objection. I want
Gentleman
everybody to have an opening statement.
Gentleman will.
I'm
Gentleman
objecting
will
to your opening
suspend.
statement comment, nothing else.